It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, check us out on YouTube if you have not already. Go subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and leave a like on the videos. Let us know what you'd like to see in the comments. If you have any questions for a future episode that we can answer, let us know. Whether you're watching over on YouTube or listening on the listening platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcast, go check out the description. We have all of our links to our great sponsors, but at the top of the links, it is Rockin' Around the 412 Year 7. It's the GoFundMe link to our Christmas fundraiser. Over the past 6 years, we've been able to raise over $32,000 to be able to provide children in the local 724-412 area codes the Christmas that they've always deserved. Christmas, Smitty and I never had to worry about where it was coming from growing up. And so because of that, we have tried to give back the best we can with the help of everybody that donates. Also, the last few years, we partnered with the East Rochester Salvation Army. We've gotten dozens of kids off of their angel tree adopted, and including tons this year so far. That's a big part of the mission. If you haven't checked out Smitty's video over on Twitter, it kind of explains why there's a lower number on the GoFundMe than in the past, because a lot of the help this year has been through the East Rochester Salvation, adopting kids off of that angel tree. So if you want to get involved into the angel tree specifically, you can do so. And the gifts specifically have to be back to the Salvation Army by December 9th. So you have to get them either to Smitty or to the Salvation Army beforehand. The hard cutoff is December 9th. And I believe we made the hard cutoff for our GoFundMe for the individual families December 14th. So if you are able to donate, please do. If not, share the message at least. You never who's going to know who is able to see it. But we want to get this thing rolling. We have a little over a month left, which is pretty crazy. We started off July 1st every year. So if you want to get involved, do it now, because it's going to be gone before you know it.
Absolutely. You mentioned that video that I had posted. Yeah, I was just giving people an update. While that is true, if you just go to the GoFundMe and you look at how much money we've raised, it looks like a smaller number. Thanks to Kaylee reaching out to Isla's pre-K, we're going to be taking care of more kids this year through this mission than we have in the past. Any single 1 year. Like, that's already guaranteed. Already 50 kids are going to have their Christmas provided to them through this mission. And again, that's not necessarily all our dollars coming out of our fundraising, but that's, Kaylee going around spreading the word and these people saying, hey, we want to be a part of this too, which is just absolutely awesome to see. So the East Rochester Salvation Army, we've already gotten 44 tagged from them. That number continues to climb. And then with a couple other families that we're helping out as well, that number total kids is already over 50 in terms of the amount of kids that will have their Christmas provided to them through this mission this year, which is absolutely awesome to see. Can't thank you guys enough, because it wouldn't happen without you. Donate at least at least $10 to be eligible to win any of our prizes, including Penguin tickets, a Pat Fryermuth autographed jersey, Jared Jones autographed jersey, a Steelers jersey of choice, a Pirates jersey of choice, 2 Game Changer shirts, rocking one right now. Not going to play the ad yet, even though I said the magic word, or 2 Around the 412 hoodies. Oh, and then, dang, I forgot about this on the video, but John Walker donated a couple things. Shout out to my boy John. Donated the James Daniels game worn visor, and then that 16x20 print that's signed by 21 different people in the Steelers organization, or at least were in the Steelers organization at the time of training camp. So shout out to John for that. But very excited about that. Very excited about everything that we got going on, and very excited, Tyler, that the Steelers made a couple additions at the NFL trade deadline. That's what we're here to talk about. Appreciate you guys tuning in for that first 4 minutes of just kind of giving you a spiel about the Christmas mission, but we're here now to talk about football. At long last, the team has acquired a receiver. This search has been going on for literally 8 months, since this spring in March, when this team traded Deontay Johnson and wanted to meet with Mike Williams before he signed with the Jets. However, he had some type of breakfast sandwich in the facility and never got out of East Rutherford. Ended up signing with the Jets in free agency. They make some moves. They go out and get Devontae Adams for Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they had to be reunited. And it kind of puts Mike Williams in a weird spot in the pecking order there. I still didn't think he was going to be traded because Alan Lazard on IR. The Jets won their 3rd game of the season, which even at 3-6, with the state of the AFC, that's in the mix right now. So I didn't think it was foregone conclusion that Mike Williams is going to be traded. However, trade deadline day comes, the only thing that was going on yesterday, and Mike Williams gets traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2025 fifth-round pick. Not necessarily the return that I saw coming. I figured Mike Williams is probably worth like a day 3 pick swap or something. So I think straight up, maybe they gave up a little bit more than I thought they would for 9 games of Mike Williams. But desperate times call for desperate measures. What's your first thought on the trade?
I think that this is a win for the Steelers on the surface. Now, of course, Mike Williams has to actually play in the games. We'll see how he plays in a Steelers uniform. I'm optimistic, but I think strictly from a player standpoint, player mold that the Steelers are looking for, big body receiver, can play on the outside, is a willing blocker in the run game. They hit a home run with who they got. And with the 5th-round pick, we've talked about before that sometimes when you're trading for a player, you have to be willing to give up more than you were going to for that player if you want to improve your team. I think that while a 5th-round pick may be a little higher than you or I or several others thought that Mike Williams would get, I'm willing to be okay with giving up a 5th-round pick if that means that the Steelers actually got a wide receiver too. If they got somebody that is going to be a willing blocker on the outside, if they got somebody that is going to take away some of the secondary coverage that would be eyeing George Pickens and they have to cover the other side of the field now, I'm willing to partake or I'm willing to depart with that 5th-round pick. And I think that this is something that the Steelers absolutely needed. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum for, like you mentioned, 8 months. This is how long we've been talking about wide receivers as when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that when it comes to the player personnel, like I said, this mold of player, I think this is exactly what the Steelers needed. It may not be the biggest fish that they could have gotten. It may not be the biggest target all season that they could have gotten. I mean, they were going after Brandon Ayuk for all people, but they didn't end up getting that. They didn't end up getting DeAndre Hopkins. But I think for what Mike Williams can be as far as the player type, that's exactly what the Steelers needed. A big body receiver that can go up and catch the ball. I don't think he has the speed that he did whenever he was playing for the Chargers. I think that the injury last year kind of hurt that a little bit, but I do think that he still has enough speed to be able to stretch the field in certain circumstances. And that's something that I think the Steelers need. And like I mentioned, and this is something that I think is going to fly under the radar for a lot of people just because you get a receiver, you pretty much only think of the receiving game. But I think having a receiver that is willing and able to block at a high level is something that the Steelers are going to desperately need going down the stretch as they play these better teams in the second half of the season. We've seen what Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, we see what those guys can be as blockers on the outside. It's not the greatest. Getting somebody that can be more efficient out there in the blocking game, I'm sure Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are going to appreciate that. And I think Steeler fans, as the games go on and they see blocking happen from a guy like Mike Williams, that's going to be something that they appreciate as well.
I think this is one of those cases where he wasn't the most talented weapon, obviously, that they could have acquired from back then until now, since we've been talking about receivers, obviously. But if you want to talk about just like fit, that's kind of where like rubber meets the road for me in terms of it lines up perfectly for them in terms of the type of receiver that they should have been coveting. That conversation for me has changed based off the arrival, I'll say, of Calvin Austin. Like, I feel like he legitimately looks like he should be a starting slot receiver in the NFL. Even when the production didn't necessarily match at the beginning of the year, dude was always open. I feel like now we're just seeing the opportunities actually come to fruition now that Russell Wilson has taken over under center. But I think just in terms of getting a guy like Mike Williams in here, like you said, to take some of that, coverage away. Maybe they can't always bracket George Pickens. They got to pay some attention to Mike Williams. It gives you another option. It gives you another side of the field that you can throw those go balls to. If they have to play 2 high safeties, that's obviously taking the safety out of the box. So you're getting a little bit lighter boxes, which will obviously help out in the run game. Like, while I don't think Mike Williams is the best player they could have acquired, I think it was one of the better fits that they could have acquired. And that's why, to me, the conversation changed from just get any receiver in here that's going to add something to this room to get a guy like Mike Williams, because it's a guy that can play on the boundary. It's a guy that can do all the things that I listed already. And I think an like under talked point about this all is the injury prevention, or not prevention, but insurance that it gives you. You know, obviously we don't want George Pickens to go down. That would be disastrous for the state of this wide receiver room. But you didn't have another guy that could like at least fill that spot in some capacity. Now you do. Not saying that he's going to produce at that level, but he can run those same types of routes that you're having George run right now. Obviously gives you the insurance on Van Jefferson. Mike Williams has also been super productive out of the slot, despite his frame. Like the Jets have been using him out of the slot quite a bit, and actually, you know, was more productive than there. Now it's not, you know, a ton, regardless of where he was lined up, but he's more productive in the slot there than he was on the outside. So I like the move. Again, I think the frustration in terms of the 5th round pick I get, but again, it's kind of like it's frustration not with that individual move, but because of the return that you see for DeAndre Hopkins, because they put themselves in a position to have to give up this 5th round pick straight up for Mike Williams by doing nothing else beforehand. Like, I think it's just they were a product of their environment, and that was the price tag that they had to pay. Because let's be honest, if they don't do that, like maybe the Jets weren't willing to part with him for anything less because of what we said with, like, they would have just been like, we lost Allen Lazard. We're still kind of in the mix. Why don't we just hang on to Mike? Like, you had to make it at least somewhat enticing for the Jets as well. They weren't just going to give him away, which I think plays into it as well.
Yeah, and I think that you texted me this the other day when we were talking about it, is that, like, best case scenario, he plays really well in the second half for the Steelers. He's a free agent after this season, so he is a rental. He leaves, signed a decent enough contract where the Steelers can recoup a comp pick for Mike Williams. I mean, that is your best case scenario that you're looking at. But even past 2024, I'm not even worried about a comp pick right now. I'm just worried about what he can do with the Steelers right now. Yeah. And that's, I think, what everybody should be worried about. And I don't think anybody should be worried about that 2025 5th round pick either. I think that when I look at him with the Steelers, echoing everything you just said and what I had just said before that, as far as like the fit, I feel like a player that's going to like having Mike Williams is Russell Wilson, because I feel like that is somebody who Russell Wilson easily can target. And it as far as where he likes to throw the ball on the field, which we know is not the middle, it's towards the outsides. Mike Williams is going to be easily targeted by Russell Wilson, and I'm sure we're going to see it early on in that capacity. And I think that something else that needs to be said about what Mike Williams specifically, when it comes to his relation to the Steelers, is looking at Arthur Smith and his offense. He has always had a receiver that was kind of this type of mold, whether that is going to be Drake London in Atlanta or Corey Davis in Tennessee. He's always had that big-bodied receiver, Matt Collins in Tennessee. It makes sense. It makes sense why this would be the target for the Steelers outside of the actual receiver needs. But looking at the offensive coordinator and his tendencies of what he's gotten out of receivers, this is something that I think that could do well in Arthur Smith's offense specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up those names. Like Mock Draftable, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with, but it puts together combine data and it gives you comparable players from going back since the combine became a thing. So you can just kind of see athletically what kind of profiles of players line up with one another. Matt Collins, Mike Williams, Drake London, and Corey Davis are all right in that same group. T. Higgins is in there as well, and also former Steeler Limas Swede in that same grouping. Not too many percentage points off. Not that Steeler fans want to hear that name. But I do think that that's interesting because, like you said, it's a receiver that Arthur Smith has had. It's a receiver he's had success with. This is a guy that's going to get under some Russ Moon balls. Mike Williams talked about that today, how excited he is. Like, we're not that far removed from this guy being a super productive receiver. Tore his ACL in 2023. Very early in the season. I think it was like 3-4 games in. But at that point, he had already had 19 catches for 249 yards, like 3-4 games in. 2022, his last full season, 63 receptions, 895, 4, 76, 1,109 in 2021, 48, 756, and 5 in 2020. First 1,000-yard season that he had in 2019, he had 49, 1,001, and 2. He had a 10-touchdown season his second year in the NFL. 43 receptions, 664, and 10. Like, this is a big play guy. You look at his yards per reception too, never been under 10 in a full season that he's played in. Like, this is a big play threat. And I think that if he's even close to being where he has been at in his career for most of it. Athletically, that can still be brought out in him. I just think it was a really bad fit with the Jets. They don't do, the moon balls. They don't take the downfield shots. Aaron wants to get out of his hands quick. It was a weird marriage. I think here, if he's even close to being the same athlete, it's a real game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them. That always makes me mad when I'm watching that back when I say, and guess what? Just tell them. Tell them what. I need to redo that so bad. Anyways, back to Mike Williams. Yeah. I actually don't know if I have anything else to say on Mike Williams. So you have anything else to say?
I don't think so. I think we talked enough about him, but they did make another move, which I don't know about you. That was surprising to me that not only did they make a move, but they made a move that honestly was a smart move in reality, getting Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers for a 2025 seventh round pick. That is an easy trade for me. It is free for the Steelers.
They had 3 sevens.
It's a no-brainer. You don't even if they had 1 7th, you don't even think about that pick most of the time in the draft. The fact that they had 3, no-brainer for the Steelers. What did you think of the move, and were you surprised at all that they just made a second move regardless?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the 7th round pick, real quick, I want to add this just because I don't want it to slip my mind as I'm talking, especially like in today's climate where NIL is so prevalent and you're seeing less and less underclassmen. Like day 3 of the NFL draft, I think going forward is going to be very watered down. Like I think it's going to be hard to come by really good players on day 3. You're still going to find them. Like talent finds talent, but I just wanted to add that caveat in there. Yeah, I mean, I think the great Alan Saunders put it best the other day or just yesterday. 2 days ago by the time you guys are watching this, to me on the podcast, when he said, this is like going shopping, this not being on your grocery list, but it being something that you all of a sudden decide that you want and you just get it because the price is too good to pass up. That's what Preston Smith was. Like total luxury move. They didn't need another edge rusher. Clearly they'd like to have 4 though. I mean, this is like if Marcus Golden didn't retire, what they envisioned having within this rotation. And he's a different stylistic fit, like he's a bigger body guy. He's listed as 265. I can tell you right now, that's like Darnell Washington being listed at whatever he's listed at. That ain't true. He's definitely heavier than that. That's like a
couple weeks ago too.
Yeah. There's a tight ends coach, right? Alfredo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, when Preston, you're 6'7", 300. Oh, wait.
Preston Smith was probably 265 like 3 years ago when he was playing off ball as well for Green Bay. But the pass rush production, we've seen it dip a little bit, just 2.5 sacks this year, but like as recently as last year was still at 8, 9.5 the year before. So we've seen it. Snaps went down, the defense changed. They went from a 4-3 to a 3-4. He's a better fit in 4-3 as an outside rush linebacker. So he actually requested a trade apparently a couple weeks ago. I feel like no one talked about that or knew that was a thing. But I think him landing with the Steelers is perfect because, again, it gives them the insurance, obviously. It allows you to give guys like Highsmith and Watt a spell, and it gives you a bigger bodied option over Herbig, who we know what he can do as a pass rusher. And I think he's held his own and done as good as he could do against the run. But still, like, this is a dude that is stout against the run, can set the edge as well as a run defender as anybody that plays the position. So I really like this move. Even if it is just for the rest of this year, you give up that 7th every time. Don't even think twice about it. And just from like a fit perspective, I think it makes all the sense in the world. So while I wasn't expecting this, and when I saw Jerry Dulac post like they might not be done yet, I thought like he had gotten the news like 4 hours late about something else. So, like normally happens with Jerry. But no, they did have a second move in their cards. It's Preston Smith, and I'm personally a big fan of this.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I think that if you're Jeremiah Moon, you don't love it as much. But I think from a Steelers perspective, I think that this is a smart move because you do it for absolutely nothing. And it gives you more depth at that edge rusher position, which is something that we've kind of talked about. And especially seeing Jeremiah Moon play this season at the NFL level. Not something that has been at all times great from a depth perspective. And so being able to have the luxury of having 4 edge rushers that you feel really good about, that's something that you take every single day of the week. And like you mentioned, he hasn't put up a ton of numbers this year. Last year had 8 sacks. But if that's your edge rusher 4 or 3, however you want to determine who him and Herbig would be, I think you take that every single day of the week. I think that it's a solid move for the Steelers, and it makes their defense better moving forward. It allows it takes less pressure off of Watt and Highsmith to, I don't want to say stay healthy, but like, because obviously there's always pressure on that. But I feel like it takes less pressure off them knowing that they've got people behind them with Herbig and now Preston Smith that can give them a breather, and you don't necessarily feel like you're going to be lacking on the edge necessarily. And I think that this is a smart move, one that nobody saw coming, like you mentioned. But I think that as far as a Steelers trade deadline goes, I am very welcomed to see them making 2 moves that I think are smart and improve the team.
I think the big thing for me is, like, a lot of people are saying, do these move the needle? Are they all of a sudden contenders? They were a better football team after the trade deadline than they were before. I think that's the big thing here. To what degree, I don't know. Do I view them all of a sudden as being like right there equal with like the Detroit Lions or Kansas City Chiefs or whoever of the world at the upper echelon? Not necessarily, but are they a tier right down right now? Can they win a playoff game? Can they win 2 playoff games? I think so. I think that they're more in the conversation now than they were before. And despite how I feel, that's not the thought internally. To me, this was a massive statement to the current roster when they did this, that they have belief in the group, that they've shown them enough to buy into, and they feel like it's almost like rewarding them in a way, like going out and doing things at the trade deadline. We don't care about these future assets. We don't care about these draft picks. We're willing to invest them into this current group right now because we feel like this is a group worth investing into. And when you have guys that are, I'm not going to say they're at the end of their career, but certainly on the last 9 in Russell Wilson, Cam Hayward, when TJ Watt is, one of the best defensive players of all time and he hasn't won a playoff game yet. These are the types of moves I think that you have to make. Let's treat this like a short window because I feel like it is. So while I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and go on a spiel about them being, Super Bowl favorites or anything like that, are they in a better position today to win a playoff game or 2 than they were prior to the trade deadline? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that as far as being a contender goes, I wouldn't say that they are necessarily competing with the Chiefs or the Lions either. But you saw the narrative kind of shift in the national media after the Jets and the Giants game, after Russell Wilson's first 2 starts, where people started to say that you need to take the Steelers more seriously. Their record is starting to become more realistic to how they're playing on the field.
Yeah, they have an offense again.
It's not like a phony 2020 or 2020 Steelers where they start 11-0. This is a record that is evident of how they're playing on the field. They have an offense. Russell Wilson is playing at a good level, albeit through 2 games. But you saw the narrative shift that the Steelers need to be taken seriously. And I think that these moves just add to that narrative. Now, if they're going to win the Super Bowl or not, I don't know. But I think that when it comes to winning the division, making the playoffs, winning a game, maybe 2, like you had mentioned, I think that this puts them even more in a prime position than they were already in, especially offensively. I think that the depth move with Preston Smith is something to be talked about with just as far as depth goes. But getting Mike Williams is something that can take this offense to potentially another level that they haven't had, and they've already shown another level whenever it comes to having Russell Wilson as their quarterback. I think that getting another receiver, big body receiver on the outside, can add another wrinkle to that.
Yeah, that's why I keep going back to, like, it's not just about Mike Williams himself individually. It's about what he's going to do for the other guys. Like, I think everybody else is going to be better versions of themselves and be able to be more productive just because of his presence. Like, and it's not necessarily about what he is at this point in his career as a type of a player. It's about what he brings, specifically the one thing that he brings to this offense. Like, you have to respect that part. He's never been like a great athlete. I guess that's the one plus side in terms of if the athleticism has been sapped by injury. It's not like he was ever a great separator. He's a really good contested catch guy that can go down the field and use his big frame. That's what they're going to ask him to do. And because of that, if you have to play another guy over top, That guy, it's one less guy to commit to the run. It's one less guy to commit to the middle of the field for Calvin Austin and Pat Freiermuth. Like everybody benefits by this addition, even if Mike Williams himself doesn't put up big numbers within this offense.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it works out. We're gonna preview this upcoming game with Washington. Talking about that on the Steelers Saturday sit down at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you haven't watched it already, tune in on YouTube, Smitty's Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. We go live at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll preview this game against the Washington Commanders. But we'll talk about more of that on there. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about as far as the Steelers go? Because I'm kind of out of
stuff. There's some stuff I want to kind of drop in just because there was a lot of conversation about Adam Thielen, who widely thought to be the Steelers' target. I was told at one point more likely than Mike Williams even that he would be the guy. I know there was a point in time where like he was your guy. To give you some credence on that, I will say that was prior to Calvin Austin's coming out party on Monday Night Football that you said that. So that was kind of at the point where I was also like, yeah, just get any receiver in here. And then, of course, like I said, my mind shifted to it being an outside guy. Anyways, there was conversation with Carolina. Apparently, they were asking for the same pick that we gave up for Mike Williams, which is a 5th-round pick. They were not going to do that for a 34-year-old Adam Thielen coming off an injury that he's missed every game since week 1 or week 2, I think. So, he hasn't played in quite a bit, and he's older. The Steelers had no interest in trading that pick, but Carolina was not budging on that 5th-round pick. Was that the case because they'd already traded Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Mingo, which, by the way, that Jonathan Mingo trade's insane. Dallas giving up a 4. As somebody, I was a big Jonathan Mingo guy coming into when he was drafted last year, but a 4th-round pick for him. I know that that means you have 2.5 years or whatever of control, but control's only good if the player's good. So I mean, Dallas seems to be throwing around 4th-round picks like they're nothing. They give up a 4th for Trey Lance the previous year. So, but anyway, yeah.
Like prior to that move, I would have said it's a buyer's market. And then that move happened, and I'm like, what is Dallas doing?
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Did the price for Mike Williams go up because of the Jonathan Mingo trade?
People are saying. I really don't understand, because prior to that, I mean, even the move for DeAndre Hopkins, that makes way more sense than Dallas giving up a 4th for Jonathan Mingo. I understand that you get the control, but what? I don't understand what Dallas is doing. They're a mess right now anyway.
I just got a text from somebody. Feel like it's worth bringing up on here. We can monitor this.
Man, is this like Adam Schefter live on like part of my take? Or
I'm just saying, if this comes true, the second half of this year, remember where you heard it first. I just got a text from somebody that said, this is interesting. I was told expect to see Calvin snaps on the outside increase. So maybe they view Mike Williams as a big slot option. Like I said, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see if that takes place. I would have thought, it gives you the bigger body on the outside, and that's a way to, keep the defense honest, but we'll see. We'll see if that's the case.
I like the creativity and the versatility that you get with Mike Williams, knowing that he has experience playing inside and outside. If they want to experiment with that, that's fine. I'm curious to see what Calvin Austin more so on the outside would look like too. I think that you're very experimental right now with the Steelers offense, and the fact that you have options to be able to do those things, that just means the needle is pointing up from where it was. Like we mentioned, starting this talk 8 months ago, looking for a wide receiver.
And I think that, George, Mike, and Calvin are their best 3, in my opinion. All credit to, I think Van's taken a nice increase.
Russell Wilson has helped Van Jefferson.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's blocked better over the last couple of weeks, and I think he's looked like at least a competent option for the pass catching group if need be. That said, I think the top 3 options are the, not including Pat Fryer, but just top 3 receivers. But what I thought about as a potential idea, because of Mike's ability to play in the slot too, if you just want to go big at receiver, you could play Mike in the slot and then Van and George on the outside. So it's interesting that I was thinking about Mike in the slot to a degree, but not with Calvin being the other outside guy.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm more intrigued by Calvin on the outside than I am on Mike on the inside. Based off that text, I'm curious to see how Calvin more on the outside, maybe not full time, but like more snaps out there, how that would look.
Yeah. And I don't want to upset people, but we're kind of dropping nuggets of information right now. Because I know you were interested in Darius Slayton. That was my top guy going into trade deadline day out of guys that I thought were like possible, right? Like I know that DK Metcalf was a pipe dream for some Steelers fans. I'm actually not even I'm choosing not to believe what Mike Florio said about it, that they could trade a first plus and maybe and have landed him like he wasn't completely off the table. Hard for me to buy into that idea. Jacoby Myers, I feel like was completely created by fans as well. I don't know that I actually heard that he was available or the Raiders were listening on him. So Darius Slayton was my top guy. The text that I got, it was like shortly after midnight, Monday night / Tuesday morning, whatever you want to consider it. The text that I got was Steelers are still trying to pry away Darius Slayton from the Giants. And I was like, okay, this word like pry away, like that to me tells me everything I need to know about the Giants' willingness or lack thereof to move him. I had heard it was a 3 that the Giants were looking for him. I saw somebody else say it was a 2. Like there was no way that anybody's trading a 2 for 9 or 8 games, depending on where your team's at in the season, of Darius Slayton. He's a good player, but that's not happening. I would have been okay with a 3 with the, like, you'd have to be 100% guaranteed that this guy signed an extension, and I would have been okay with it. But yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there as well, because that was to me, I think the Steelers were trying really hard on that one. Once they realized, we're not offering them a day 2 pick for this guy, then they shifted to the Mike Williams route.
Yeah, I don't think I just don't think that day 2 pick would have cut it.
Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. There you go. Not bad. Taught you well. So yeah, just keep an eye on the Mike Williams, Calvin Austin thing. If we see those two interchange quite a bit, if you're somebody that wanted Adam Thielen over Mike Williams, know that they could have gone for the same price and be upset about it, I guess. And yeah, Darius Slayton, they were not getting for anything less than a day 2 pick. There's been some variance again in terms of what that was. I had heard a 3. I saw somebody else say it 2. That is hard for me to believe. The 3 makes sense. I think that that's feasible within the realm of possibility. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts to add on that?
Not necessarily that. The last thing I was just thinking about before we close out, what did you think of Tomlin's thoughts as far as he was questioned whether they want to get in Fields more involvement still.
Oh,
and he's basically is like, as long as he's on the roster, that's always going to be in the cards for the Steelers. What do you make of that? Do you think that there's something that it actually has credence with Tomlin saying that, or is that just a smokescreen?
No, I think we're going to see him. The hamstring thing kind of popped up, and I am curious to how much of a issue it was. Like if he had, say Russ wasn't back yet and he was dealing with whatever he was dealing with, would he have been able to play through that? But they had the bye week obviously after, so might as well be safe with it. I do think that you see it at some point. I think it's gonna be matchup specific how often we see it. I also think it could depend on, like, do they continue to struggle in the red zone? Like, the offense has been good, but they've had their struggles certainly in the red zone still. His legs just add a different dimension where he's been kind of able to make up for that when plays aren't there to be made. So yeah, I think we see it at some point. Tomlin's obviously got to be coy on it. I know Arthur loves the idea of using it. I think he's too good of an athlete to just completely push to the side and say we don't have a use for this within our offense. So yeah, I think they'll break it out at some point. I don't know exactly when. I'm not sure Washington's the right matchup to do it.
I love it. I like it. I want to see it too.
You went from I love it to I like it. I wasn't sure if we were going in the wrong direction there, but
I love it. I like it. Never mind. I don't like
it. All right, good stuff. Anyways, yeah, not going to talk about that Washington game because we'll preview it this week on Steelers Saturday Sit Down. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live, which will be around 10 a.m. Eastern, which is 8 a.m. Tyler's time. So shout out to Tyler for getting up and doing it with us. But 10 a.m. Eastern for all you East Coasters. 8 a.m. where Tyler, even earlier, I guess, if you're on the West Coast and you're a fan of us, 7 a.m. potentially, you're getting up to watch Steelers Saturday Sit Down, or you're watching it back. I know quite a few people watch it back as well, but we've really enjoyed doing it, have gotten great feedback on it, and have it's been cool to add that to the content that we're doing on the channel. If you have any other ideas for content on the channel, be sure to leave that in the comments, as well as your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Follow us on everything at Around the 412, of course. In the description, whether you are watching this on YouTube or listening on one of our platforms, which, by the way, leaves a 5-star review and subscribe over there. If it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you'll see a bunch of links. One of those, year 7, rocking around the 412. Very excited about the progress we've made this year. Adopted more tags, are going to be taking care of more kids this year at Christmas than any other year in the past. Already 50 plus. Every single penny donated to rocking around the 412 goes to giving Christmas to kids in the 724 and 412 area codes. Also, every single penny donated, well, if it's over $10, I should say, makes you eligible to win one of our prizes, whether it's Penguin tickets from your boy Tyler. Every single year he's been doing that. Jared Jones autographed jersey, Pat Fryermuth autographed jersey, 2 Game Changers shirts, which we talked about them earlier, and I'm wearing right now. 2 Around the 412 hoodies, not 2, it's 2 separate people. I guess I should specify that the same person's not going to get both of those. 16 by 20 autographed Steelers print. 21 different people in the organization, or were in the organization, signed this thing at training camp. Our boy John Walker donating that, as well as a game used James Daniels visor, Steelers jersey of choice, Pirates jersey of choice. There you go. Those are the prizes. Donate at least $10 to be eligible to win one of those. Last 3 years, started partnering up with the East Rochester Salvation Army. We talked about the tags, but we've been doing that the last 3 years and plan on continuing that going forward in the name of our late friend Dalton Keene. Also in the description, we got everything custom designs. We got our shorts through DC4L Customs. We got the link to Game Changer or Pick 6. Pick 6 is where all their football shirts are. Game Changers, everything else. Save $10 using code AT412 at checkout. Everything custom designs are where those 2 hoodies that I talked about for the Christmas thing will be coming from. Our friend Haley Wagner's small business. Check her out for all of your custom needs. And I think that's it. There's a lot there to digest, I know. But yeah, join us for this week's Penguin Show. If you're a hockey fan, I don't know, how great of an episode that's going to be talking about this team, but there's some positives to talk about, more than last week, I should say. So it won't be as doom and gloom as a week ago. Also, once again, join us this week, Steelers Saturday Sit Down, to preview Steelers and Commanders. Until then, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers Show, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.